Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name is Rachel and I'm the owner of Helen Olivia Flowers, and I will be teaching your mantle workshop today. Christmas mantles are one of my favorite things to make. Every year I look forward to making custom, beautiful, lush mantles for our clients, and so I'm very excited to show you today how we create them. Before we get started, I'll talk you through some of the supplies because there's quite a vast array of supplies for workshop today. The first thing that you need to do to get prepared is to soak your long and low trays. So behind me, I've got a really cool vintage piece of furniture that I'm designing on, and we're going to pretend that it is a mantle, even though it's clearly not. But I've pre-soaked all of my foam. And we don't use a lot of foam in our flower shop, but we do use it for certain projects and floral mantles. It's just a great help in getting good volume and shape in your mantle. So we have 4 trays for today's class, and the foam is taped into the trays so that they're nice and secure. And you just need to pre-soak your foam. So throw it in a full kitchen sink or bathtub or bucket and just let it fully submerge. You don't want to force the foam down with your hand, just let it kind of submerge on its own. And you can tell it's got some weight to it. So in addition to this giving us like a canvas to design into, it's also going to give your greens a water source. If you've ever handled fresh greens before, you know that towards the end of the season, they can get a little crunchy and like Frito-Lay-like. So this is gonna help with keeping our greens really fresh and beautiful. So we need to get all 4 of our trays soaked and ready for class. And then you'll also need a couple of tools to put your mantle together. The first thing will be a pair of good sharp scissors to cut ribbon with. And then we also are going to need a pair of floral shears or clippers. If you don't have these, grab an extra pair of scissors and you can cut your stems with scissors, though it's a lot easier with a pruner. We also have, I've gifted all of you a Christmas green stripper, so it should be in your bag. This is going to help with stripping away needles and fir and pine as we put the stems into your long and low trays, so very useful. And that's really all tool-wise that you need to get prepared, but I would recommend finding a surface, a space where you can kind of lay everything out. So we've got a couple of different types of greenery in our peach baskets. These are South Carolina peach baskets that our beloved farmer Dave brought for us. So lots of greenery, honestly more greenery than we could ever hope to use in our mantles are in these baskets. And then everyone also has beautiful magnolia tips and then a bunch of glitzy decor items. So we've got birch branches, we have 2 different types of ribbon, we have some faux berries, some pine cones, and some ornaments. And I'm looking this way because I'll show you, I've set up a little supply station for myself just off camera. So make sure you get everything kind of easy and within reach, and then you'll have easy access to it as we start designing. So with making a mantle, you can design your mantle one of 2 ways. So you might elect to do your mantle as one long continuous piece, which is the most traditional way to build a mantle, and that's how I am set up on my table. Some people though, especially if you have like a very long mantle or if you have pretty knickknacks that you like to put on your mantle, you may decide to break it into a few different pieces, and I'll show you what you might do. So if you have, for example, candles, you could spread your trays out and mix in pretty pockets of candles in between your trays, and that would be a way to elongate your design. So before we get rocking and rolling, you want to kind of think in your head if you're going to be making one continuous mantle piece or if you want to break it into segments. And you have more than enough product to do either, so just consider what you want to do before we get started. So the first thing when I go to design a mantle is I want to kind of trace out the shape of my mantle, and I'm going to be mindful of what is hanging over my fireplace. So if you have, for example, a flat screen TV or a piece of artwork, you may want to keep your mantle a little bit lower, your mantelpiece. so it doesn't interfere with like TV watching for the rest of the holiday. If you have though a mirror, don't worry about it. You can always go really high in front of a mirror and it's beautiful, the reflection of the greenery in the mirror. So that's not really a determining factor. But artwork or TVs, you definitely want to bring down the height so you're not in the way. And then you're going to trace out your shape with greenery. And I like to start always with magnolia when I trace my shape. And you can do one of two shapes for your mantle. So the most traditional old school mantle shape would be a fan. So higher in the center and kind of fans off to the side. A little bit more modern would be all one height. And so I'm gonna do something that's a little bit in between those two. But I'm going to start with my magnolia. So just cut the rubber band off. And you're going to break your magnolia into pieces. So you can use the top and the bottom separately. So I've just separated those stems in half. And you can put some pieces kind of straight up and down. And then you can also angle some of your pieces forward. So we want to angle some pieces forward so that we cover the plastic lip of the trays. So you'll put some forward and some straight up and down and some in the middle. One thing that's very, very important, and I'll tell you a little horror story of my own, is you want to make sure that you are putting greenery towards the back of your tray so that you get weight in the back of your tray and you're not just focusing your greenery on what's kind of falling and cascading forward. So I one time in my early years did not do a good job of that and I had a mantle fall off. So you want to make sure that you really give some nice good weight to the back. So I'm going to start with both of my bunches of magnolia. I'm going to use it all up to begin with. And make sure you also extend out the side. So we're just blending all over. So this is my first bunch done. And now I'm going to come behind with my second bunch and fill in a little bit more. So magnolia is a fun product because you can really let the brown side show if you like the look of brown. If you don't, you can turn the leaves around and get more of a green, so you can decide what your preference is. I'm just going to keep popping this in. And if you have any individual leaves that fall off, you can even stick just the individual leaves in alone. Just pretty color. Like that. All right, so I've got my first layer of greenery popped in, so you can see that the shape is really nicely traced out at this point. And we're gonna start mixing in the other types of greenery out of our peach basket. So our peach basket has a really beautiful mix of different cedars and fir. So really gorgeous. This is one of my favorites because it gives some drape and movement in your design. And this is all locally grown Virginia and Carolina sourced. So it's really nice to be using local product. So I'm just gonna cut my greenery into smaller, more manageable pieces. And this is where the Christmas green stripper is going to become your best friend. So all Christmas greenery and evergreen have really low-lying needles and leaves. So you can get a lot of like sap and yuck on your hands if you try to strip. I'll show you. This is actually not that gross, but my hands over the course of December just are covered in tree sap. It's the story for every single florist in America right now. But Christmas green strippers are so incredible because you don't get your hands quite as dirty and they clean the stems right up. So definitely use these. And we're just gonna cut the stems down to a more manageable length. You probably want like 2 or 3 inches of clean stem to insert into the foam. And we're just gonna start working this greenery in all over our mantle. So one thing that I love to do that's really helpful is I like to do my repetitive work all at once. So I'm just gonna cut like 10 pieces of greenery, strip the stems all at once, and then insert them into my mantle. If you do it one at a time, it'll take you forever. So definitely do all of your cutting at one time, then do all of your stem cleaning at one time, and then do all of your inserting into the mantle at one time. All right, so I've got a good little handful of greenery. I'll come back over. And I'm gonna go ahead and really focus on getting some front coverage in my mantle, so getting some nice drape down. One thing I can tell you from experience is that it's tough to really tell how much coverage you need draping forward until you actually move your mantle designs up onto the mantle. So you have plenty of greenery. Once you get it up there and you're looking at it from a different angle, you may notice that you have some holes, but that's super easy to plug in. All right, so just doing the same thing, cleaning up a little bundle of greenery. All right, so I'm gonna take my next handful of greens and I'm gonna work on elongating my sides. So getting a really beautiful drape off the sides. And again, making sure that every time I put greens on the front that cascade up the front, I'm also putting some straight up in the back to counterweight. So you wanna make sure that you're not too front heavy in your design. Just digging through my basket of local greenery, and there's some really beautiful, this looks like some type of like arborvitaes, and it's got, this time of year, it starts to turn a reddish color on the tip, so that's really beautiful. I'm gonna work with that next. If you've taken workshop before, you may have heard us talk about Farmer Dave, and he is our local farmer, and he grows in a wind tunnel his flowers, so he's got flowers locally growing throughout the year. We buy a lot of delphinium from him, and we also get peonies in the summer, beautiful lily of the valley, and he approached us last year and asked if we wanted to buy these peach baskets full of Christmas greens, and of course they are the most charming peach baskets, so we said yes, and he's back again this year. So he is a character, but we love him. All right, so I've got my next little bundle of greens cleaned and broken down. So I'm gonna go add these in. So you can see that mantle building is just a ton of really repetitive, time-consuming work, but it's totally worth it. It's so beautiful, the finished results. So I'm going to put another couple bunches of greenery in. And don't be afraid to dig down into your peach basket. I just unearthed another type of greenery. So there's lots of treasures buried in there. And I think one of the most beautiful things about a holiday mantle like this is that you get to have such a diverse spread of greenery. This looks like It's got some blueberries on it. It looks like some type of wild juniper, so really pretty. So the advantage here to using the long and low trays is we can get that really teased and blown out look. I always call these mantelpieces, they're like Texas hair. They look like they've been hairsprayed, everything's perfect. So that's really nice. And then we also can come up with a really custom, beautiful blend of greenery that you wouldn't necessarily get with just a regular garland. So it's really beautiful, the finished result. I love these because they can be fully customized. So we have clients who get really into their Christmas decor. So we have, this season we did some that were Williamsburg themed that had lots of like dried fruits. We did some that were very glitzy with a million ornament balls. We did a dried lime mantle. So all sorts of different, very custom looking designs. We did a beautiful chinoiserie mantle. So they're fun. All right, so I'm just working on getting some coverage on the front part of my mantle now, because that's where I think I'm lacking a bit. Okay. Pop in a little bit more of my cedar. This is by far the most awkward workshop to film from a camera angle. It's tricky. You need like a wide camera angle and there's so many supplies and I feel like I'm talking to you just from my forehead. So thanks for bearing with me. So let me pop in a little bit more cedar. All right, so I've got my green up pretty well done. I'm gonna go ahead and pause on greening up because I think you guys get the picture, you understand what we're doing. But we'll transition now onto the other decor elements. And I'll kind of talk you through first the order in which I would add things, and then the different ways that we can add ribbon and ornaments to these designs. So the first thing I wanna do is I wanna come in and pop some branch into my mantle. I love a touch of texture with birch branch, and these are two different types of flocked birch. So we've got really beautiful frosted white birch, and then we've got gold birch. I learned this year that gold birch actually comes from France, which I never knew. I don't know if the white birch comes from France, but the gold definitely does. So we're gonna go ahead and just cut the birch down into smaller, like tip-sized pieces. And we're just gonna pop this in all over the mantle. And because so many of you sign up for this class, and I don't know what your home decor is, we kept things very, very neutral for this mantle. So you'll see that it's like a mixed metallic, natural feel. You can very easily pop in any other color to this mantle. As we add ornaments, you'll kind of get the gist of how we add our decor elements. So you could easily grab extra ribbon that you have around your house or extra ornaments and turn this into a custom look for yourself. All right, so I've got some gold worked in. I always say Christmas is like the one season where more is more is more is more. So I like to add in a ton of layers, different colors, textures. I think it's really fun. I do tend, even though I like a lot of knickknacks in my mantles, I tend to limit the amount of color I put in any design element. So you'll notice that, you know, if you follow us and see our mantles on social media, they tend to be 2 or 3 colors tops, and let the texture kind of speak for itself. All right, so now I'm just working in my white, and I'm making sure to also angle some of the branches out to the sides, so that it kind of sweeps and reaches out to the sides. I have some that are kind of going straight up and down, and then I've got some that are also leaning forward. So really pretty and fun texture. And I'll post a picture and some video in close-ups of this mantle on our Instagram. So if you want to see it close up later on, you can always hop over to the gram and check it out. All right, so that's all of our birch branch, so we're good there. The next thing I'm gonna add in are our berry sprays. These are faux berry sprays. I don't really like a lot of faux decor in general, but the faux berry sprays I think are really pretty, and I like the gold and the pearl color. So we're just gonna go ahead and kind of spread them apart a bit, like that. And we're going to work these into our design. If you want to shorten the stem, rather than fighting with scissors or clippers, you can just bend the stem in half, like that, and stick it in. So our mantle at this point is really starting to look like something, which is nice. It's amazing how you start with just boring old floral foam, and in 20 minutes, you have something really pretty. Okay. So I'm being careful again. I know you're probably sick of hearing me say, don't make it too front heavy, but I'm being really careful since these have a little bit more weight to them to not put them all in the front, because again, we don't want our mantle to come crashing down. Another thing that's really important in caring for your mantle to make sure it doesn't get too front heavy is making sure that you continue to water your trays. So just use a turkey baster or very carefully pour water into your trays once a day, and that'll keep the foam really nice and weighted. If you have a deeper mantle, you're a lot safer from it tipping. If you do not have a very deep mantle, if it's only like 3 or 4 inches, that's where you want to be like a little bit extra cautious. All right, so I've got all of my berries worked in, and the next thing that I'm going to do is tackle my ribbon. And ribbon makes such a huge difference when you are decorating a mantle. It really gives like weight and oomph to your design. So we have 2 really beautiful ribbons. I'll hold them up. So we've got, and please excuse my fingers and hands are filthy from Christmas. I'm like embarrassed to even hold them up to the camera. So please grab both of your ribbons. We've got a really beautiful gold kind of lame fabric, and then we've got a beautiful ivory metallic that we're going to use as well. And you'll need scissors. We're going to cut our ribbon into smaller pieces to add into our design. And this is, if you have not done this yet, this is gonna blow your mind. So ribbon is something that really does not look super pretty in Christmas decorating when you try to take like a whole big length of ribbon and design with it the whole length of it. So it's much better and easier to handle when you're cutting your ribbon down into smaller sections, and you're still going to create the look of it being one continuous piece of ribbon, but it's really smaller sections. So I'm gonna cut my ribbon into like 12 to 18-inch sections, and I'm gonna start with my thicker ribbon. So that's my piece. And I'm going to create a loop like this. So just like that, okay? And then it's gonna have a little tail that comes off of it. So I'm gonna take my wire and fold it in half to secure the loop. and here's my tail. And then I'm just gonna twist the wire around. And everyone should have like a pretty heavy duty wire. So this is gonna act as your stem, so you can just plop it straight into the mantle. And then we're going to clean up our tail. So this little flyaway piece of ribbon, you can either cut it on an angle, or what I like to do is cut it on a V. So if that's your ribbon, fold it in half, like that. And then you're gonna cut up towards the end. And that's how you get a really nice dovetail, like so. So I've got my loop and my little tail that's cut on a V. So I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna work my ribbon in throughout my mantle. And if the wire is too long, rather than cutting it and ruining your scissors, just fold it over. So you can see I've folded that. I've shortened the length of my wire a little bit. So I'm going to pop my first ribbon in. I'm gonna start on the right side of my mantle, and I'm just gonna work my way over to the left. So we're gonna create a bunch of these little loops, and it's going to create the look in our mantle of ribbon kind of working through. It's gonna look like ribbon has been woven through in one continuous piece, even though we know our secret is that we've got a whole bunch of little pieces. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Let's do it maybe 4 times. So make 4 loops with pretty tails. And again, if you want to do all of your repetitive work all at once, that can make it a lot faster. So there's 1. You're definitely going to have some leftover ribbon at the end of this, which is great. You can kind of work some into a Christmas tree or use it to tie bows on presents, but you'll have a little bit of extra. All right, so I've got all of my little loops done. I know I'm going fast at this. I'm trying to move it along because if I go really slow, this will take forever to demo. So by all means, you can pause me as much as you need to. All right, so I've picked up my dropped ribbon. I'm gonna, again, dovetail the ends of my ribbon. So I'll cut on a V. If you don't like the look of a dovetail, just cut in a clean angle. Dovetail is definitely a little bit more southern and traditional. An angled cut is a little bit more modern. So whatever speaks to you is what you should do. All right, so let's pop the rest of our ribbon in. So I'd like to do this kind of at different angles and orientations, just so that it looks like it's really like weaving its way through the design. So if one is up a little bit higher, I'll put the next one down a little bit lower. And you can see that ribbon, as it's added, really kind of beefs up the design. It fills in a lot of the voids, just pretty. And I love the contrast of this lighter metallic against the really dark green and the brown from the magnolia. I think it's so beautiful. All right, so I'm gonna step away for a second just so that you can see how this is starting to fill in. So we've got 4 pieces of that beautiful gold ribbon, and we're going to next work in, let's do maybe 4 or 5 pieces of this ivory ribbon next. This is gonna be a little bit thinner of a ribbon. So the gold was 4-inch, this is 2.5 inch and wired, just like the gold. So it holds its shape beautifully. And it's gonna be a little bit lighter of a contrast. Okay, I'm just grabbing a few more pieces of wire for myself. And this time, let's get wild. We're gonna do a different little ribbon fold. So I'm gonna take my ribbon, I'm gonna leave this as my tail. So I'm just gonna make a loop, I'll make a second loop, and I'll leave another tail. So it's almost like we're tying like a little baby bow out of this. And I'm just going to throw a wire in the middle to cinch the middle Truthfully, there is no way to screw up a ribbon going into a mantle. So however you wire and tie this, once it's in the mantle, it's gonna look fantastic. So I think I really freaked out one of our studio assistants this year. It was her first time doing Christmas. And I showed her very quickly how to wire the ribbon, probably too quickly, and she was very freaked out that she was not gonna do it correctly. And I said to her, whatever you do is perfect, it's gonna look great, and sure enough it did. So don't overthink how you wire your ribbon. There's no right way to do it. And once it gets buried into a mantle design, it all looks like $1,000,000. So you can't screw it up, take a breath. All right, so that's the floppy mess of a bow that I've made. And we're gonna make a couple of them, but I'll show you. We're just gonna pop this in to our mantle. And I'm just gonna go in between all of the beautiful gold ribbon. So we're starting to really eat up some of the real estate in our mantle, which is great. So I'm gonna do the same thing again. I'll do this a couple more times. And you can always come back at the end of your mantle design process and cut some of the ribbon shorter if you feel like the tails are hanging out a little bit too much, so you can go back and make edits at the bitter end. All right, so there we go. So ribbon is really beautiful to work in towards the front so that it kind of trails and cascades out of the design. And I'll make one more little loop-de-loop. Very technical term, loop-de-loop is. Okay. All right, so here's my last one. I'm gonna work him in all the way on the other side. Okay, so I think we're filling in really beautifully. Everything's looking great. I'm now gonna come behind and add some really pretty ornaments and some pine cones. So the pine cones are easy because they are pre-picked. So I'm gonna do those first, and then we'll do ornaments last. We have a combination of natural picked pine cones, and then we also have gold flocked. So just go ahead and mix these in. Okay. All right, so the last thing that we need to do is add some of our ornament balls. We're gonna get a little bit of glitz into our design. So I'm gonna switch away from wire and move over to these little stakes. These are awesome. They come with a little bit of copper wiring pre-attached to them. So we're going to use the wire to attach the little ornament balls and pop them right into the mantle. So you have too many of these. The idea is if you have any special ornaments at home that you want to use to kind of merge your whole Christmas look, you've got a little extra to be able to do that. So, all right, so we're gonna take, it's a little bit of a rat's nest, but you're gonna fight to get your little sticks out. And you can see they've got a little bit of this copper wiring attached. So we're going to make little groupings of the ornament balls. So I like to work in threes. So grab 3 ornament balls, and you're just going to feed the little hook right onto the wire, like that. So I've got 3 little balls, and then I'm going to wrap the excess wire right around the stem. So the gist of this is, if you have not picked up on a theme, is to add a stem to whatever your design elements are and pop it into the mantle. So anything at home that you can pop a stick or a stem into, it can become mantle decor very easily. So if you even had a holiday party this weekend and you wanted to be extra fancy, you could pop, like clementines are gorgeous to pop into holiday mantles, or pomegranates would be killer. Anything you find in your yard, hedge apples, whatever. As long as you can put a stem on it, you're in business. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my little ornament cluster and I'm gonna pop that in like so. So I have enough ornament balls to make 3 or 4 clusters. So I'm gonna very quickly do that. And then once I've added my ornaments, I've now worked my way through all of my design elements. So at this point, I can go back and add extra of the ribbon, and then I can also use all of my extra greenery, which I've got a ton of extra greenery, so I can really fill in any little holes or voids in my mantle. All right. So if you like the look of your ornaments spread out a little bit more, you could certainly, instead of doing groupings of 3, you could just wire single ornament balls onto your stems, but it's up to you. All right. So if you are looking for extra sparkle, you could definitely light your Christmas mantle. You could use Christmas lights, either LED, like the little tiny strands of battery-powered LED, or just regular Christmas lights. One of my favorite hacks for mantle lighting is to get a timer or even a remote control for your Christmas lights so that you can turn them on and off, which is great. The battery-powered lights, if you're using them, have come a long way in recent years. 2 or 3 years ago, they were not so great, but now they're really a lot better, and as long as you're using the warm white, they're really pretty. The warm white has more of a golden hue to it, whereas the cool white, as I'm sure a lot of you know, has a little more of a blue undertone. We tend to stay away from the cool white for Christmas and really only do the warm white. All right, so I'm just putting my last little ornament ball grouping together. There it is. And let's see, I'm gonna pop this in. So you wanna make sure wherever you put your ornament balls that they're kind of cupped by greenery so that you can really see them. You don't want them to kind of recess down, so be particular about where you put them. So the last thing to do here, like I said, is just to add extra greenery to kind of spot fill, and you can either add more ribbon or tidy up your ribbon. I'm actually going to come in and shorten my ribbon a tiny bit in a few places, just so it's not overwhelming. Yeah. And that's just about it. You'll notice that when you slide this into place up higher on your mantle, if you aren't designing it on your mantle, you'll probably see a little bit of the plastic tray. So it's great that you have extra greenery you can go and spot fill. And again, you want to add water to this once a day or every other day is great to keep the foam wet and your greenery from drying out. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for tuning in for our workshop. We just released our 2022 schedule, so if you enjoyed making this, please check out the rest of our upcoming dates, and we wish you all a very happy holiday season. Thanks, bye-bye.